de diciembre. Quiero estar seguro porque está cambiando muy rápido todo. Primero voy a hablar en inglés, después español, pero como siempre, si tiene pregunta, pone en su idioma de su preferencia el momento que usted quiere. Casos de migración, de accidentes, de penal, aquí estamos para servirle. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going over the questions I've been getting nonstop in the past few weeks. Abogado, what's happening with immigration reform? Is it going down? Who qualifies? Do I qualify? Got a lot of text messages, a lot of emails, a lot of DMs. Do I qualify? That's been the main one, right? And not a lot of people asking, do you think it's going to pass? It's more like, do I qualify? So I haven't done a video yet specifically on do you qualify and exactly who would qualify and who wouldn't. So that's the purpose of this video. That's what we're going to get into today. But of course, as always, any questions, comments, concerns, immigration, criminal, personal injury, throw them down there below and I'll get to them as best that I can. Now, the House of Representatives has passed the Build Back Better Act. So we have very good language that's passed the House. It's now in the Senate. So in order for it to become reality, it has to pass the Senate as well. If it passes the same, then it goes to the president for the president's signature. No doubt the president will sign it. I mean, it's his agenda, it's what he wants to do. He's going to go forward with it. The question is, number one, will a Senate parliamentarian allow the immigration provisions to remain in? And number two, will all the Democrats vote for it and get it to the president's desk? All right. So people have been asking me, Ray, what does it mean? What do we, when you talk about the, reconciliation, what is that, right? So the reconciliation bill says anything having to do with the budget can be passed by a majority. So the difference, we can't do immigration reform on a regular standalone bill because we can't get 10 Republicans to join with the Democrats to beat what's known as the filibuster. We got other videos on that. What you need to know about this bill here is there is a provision in these kinds of reconciliation bills that says extraneous provisions. A provision shall be considered extraneous if it produces changes in outlays or revenues which are merely incidental to the non-budgetary components of the provision. What in the heck does that mean? That means if the immigration changes, it's merely incidental, right? Because it's non-budgetary and the impact on the budget is merely incidental for the immigration changes, it can't be considered a reconciliation bill, right? What did the Senate parliamentarians say about the last efforts for us to get immigration reform in a reconciliation bill, right? She didn't like it. She didn't like it at all, right? Here's the memo from, this is, I mean, as an attorney, I cringe when I see this. Like, this is the depth. It was a letter titled LPR legislation. That was it. This is what killed it. But it really is here, right? When we take this language over here, including many not legally present in the U.S., is a policy change that substantially outweighs the budgetary impact of that change. That was why it was denied. The Senate parliamentarian said immigration reform is a policy change that substantially outweighs the budgetary impact of that change. So it's not about the budget, it's about immigration reform. Now, my humble opinion of your humble servant here is they're going to say the same thing, right? This is going to be changed to LPR legislation to parole in the legislation. Instead of, I mean, most of the arguments here does focus on the benefit of permanent residency, how beneficial that is to somebody, and how much it changes their lives. So the parole is less of that argument, but still the same. A work permit, ability to travel, all that good stuff. So I think at the end, we're going to see a Senate parliamentarian shut it down. I'm really upset with the Democrats right now. I really am. Like, why are you putting this language in there, getting our hopes up again, without getting the assurance from the parliamentarian first that this was going to be acceptable? Why not sit down, have that dialogue, that conversation? What kind of language can we include before we go and get everybody's hopes up again and pretend like we're doing something? Another conversation. I'll go on and rant on that another time. I know you wanted to know about who qualifies under this bill, right? So we come over to this bill. It's huge, 2,135 pages. We're not going to read the whole thing to get there. We're going to hit find. We're going to put the word parole in, right? Then it's going to come up here on page 862. Here on page 862, we have the beginning of the immigration provisions, right? Protections and work permits. Do love to see that coming out of the Senate Judiciary Committee, immigration provisions. So here it is, amending the INA. Now, why is this different than Daca? Daca was an attempt by President Obama to get a benefit for folks without going through the legislative process. It was an executive order. It wasn't a change to the INA, the Immigration Nationality Act, a statute, because the president doesn't have authority to do that. They're not a dictator. To change the law, you have to go through Congress, Senate, signed off by the president, or another way, but we're focusing on that right now. So Daca was not a change to the law. Here, the reason Judge Hannon couldn't shut it down if it goes back to federal court is because this is a specific change in the law by the House, by the Senate, later signed by the president, if it gets passed. So what is it saying here is that they're going to parole into the United States for a period of 5 years or until September 30th, 2031, people that apply for this, and we're going to go over that in a second. So what does parole mean? Parole is essentially a legal fiction, right? It's a fantasy, it's an imagination that we're going to give someone that's been living here for many years a document that's essentially admitting them into the country, even though they may have come in surreptitiously through the desert, or they may have come in with a visa and overstayed that. Now we're going to give them another document that they can use and say, hey, you're now admitted into this country, you're now paroled, you're now allowed to be here, right? If this person pays the administrative fee that covers the cost of processing, completes security and law enforcement background checks, and then it gets into the qualifications, right? First, it's going to say what we do. We're going to get employment and travel authorization. Isn't that awesome? Eligible for a driver's license that's compatible with real ID, so you can get a state ID as well, get on that airplane, and who qualifies. So any person described in this section that before January 1, 2011, that's the magic date, January 1, 2011, we have to prove entry before then, either with a proper admission or through the desert or through the mountains or parole, and has continuously resided in the United States. Now, there's folks, for instance, that came in with a tourist visa before 2011, started living here. They left in 2013 for a week, for a month. They came back. They still continuously resided in the country. Those folks will still be able to qualify. It's not one simple exit that will kick you out of the continuously reside, but you do have to show that you've been domiciled here in the United States since 2011, very much like Daca, right? They had to show from 2007. And then here in number 3 is where they throw all in everything. Boom. We're just going to throw it at you here. You're going to have to figure it out. It's not inadmissible pursuant to the following sections that we have up right here, right? It's not inadmissible pursuant to Section 2, Section 3, Section 6E, all these sections that have to do with the criminal grounds of inadmissibility. So there are things that the U.S. government says you can't be a permanent resident if you have a drug conviction. You can't be a permanent resident if you have a crime of moral turpitude. Those are still in play. Anybody with a criminal record should not apply until they get that reviewed by an attorney that understands these criminal grounds of inadmissibility. Terrorism, smuggling, someone ineligible for citizenship, polygamists, child abductors, unlawful voters. These are the grounds of inadmissibility that we're talking about here in these little letters. So for those individuals, those are the individuals who will not be able to apply if they wanted to, or not be able to be approved if and when they applied. All right. It is a promise, right? It's down here as a revocation. We're going to take it away. If you do something that violates it, we're still going to take it away. And the part that I love to see as an immigration attorney, confidentiality of information. Right? The Secretary of Homeland Security may not disclose information provided in the application filed under this section to ICE or CBP for purposes of immigration enforcement. So the fear of someday Trump wins again, some other jerk wins, they want to use these applications for enforcement. You can't by statute. That'd be a violation of this statute if and when it gets passed, right? Then it goes into other parts of immigration which aren't as relevant to folks, the capturing of the visas and all that good stuff. But that, in essence, ladies and gentlemen, is the gist of the great part of the parole. Now, is it ideal? Is it perfect? No. Why not? Doesn't lead to residency, doesn't lead to citizenship, doesn't lead for the ability to vote, right? Those are things that people that live in this community deserve. People that have built their life here, raised their kids here, people that have been educated here, they deserve to be equal. Right? What do the kids say when they stand up every day at the schools we force them to go to? With liberty and justice for all. Right? That's what we believe in. That's what we're supposed to be about. So how is it just simply to get a work permit? And then to go a step beyond that, how is it that we have to be begging simply to get this work permit and this promise to not be deported? It's ridiculous. We have to get by the Senate parliamentarian and convince them, the former INS trial attorney whose job was to deport people. That was her full-time job. She woke up every morning and said, hey, today, right, I'm going to go into the office and I'm going to see how many people I can get kicked out of this country. I'm going to see how many people I can keep in a detention center. That's ridiculous. And now this is the person that's going to decide whether or not we get this parole, and we have to be happy that we're getting a work permit for 10 years versus getting a path to residency and citizenship. It's ridiculous, but I know to a lot of people means a lot. I don't want to underplay that. Having a work permit, having a state ID, ability to travel, that's huge for people. That's what people want, right? So Miguel writes, is there something about submitting a sibling petition, paying a fee to speed up the process? I believe I read something about that. Yeah, so there is more language in here. Let me get this back up again. That has to do with unused visas, right? Recapturing the unused visas. So we have, based on some crazy law, a limit on the number of people that can come based on certain categories that they're in. Some of those aren't used, right? So we're going to be able to recapture some of those visas that weren't used. So more people who have been waiting years and years, Miguel, through a sibling petition. For example, right now we're at about a 20-year wait for people from Mexico for sibling petitions. This would also speed that up. So it would make it faster because we're able to capture the unused visas and able to put those back into play, so more people now who are in line don't have to wait as long. Same thing with the diversity visas here. We see those getting brought back because of COVID. They weren't issued, so trying to issue more of those. And then it goes into here about the supplemental fees that can be paid to speed up some of these applications. I think the business one, there was like a $50,000 fee or something like that. But there are fees as well that would allow people before the wait that we're telling people they have to wait right now could pay the supplemental fee here, depending on what category you're in. This is if your priority date is more than 2 years before the date we're requesting the exemption from the limits, you'd have to pay that fee and still be able to do it. So that would benefit a lot of people. But the parole would benefit millions. Millions. Some people are saying 7 million, some people are saying 8 million. I don't know the exact number, but there are also other good provisions in there. Now, there's also some bad provisions, right, which I haven't mentioned. And they're not bad in the normal sense of you see more border enforcement or you see more money for ICE or anything like that. But look at this section here, additional supplemental fees. This is traditionally what I would think of as in a reconciliation bill because it has to do with the budget. It's not incidental. Raising fees has to do directly with the budget. So we have here petitions that will go up $100 for this kind of visa petition, and then $15,000 for this visa petition, $19 for 994, student visas, an additional supplemental fee, $250, LPR cards, replacement, additional $500. So whoa, what if everything else gets taken out but this? That's not going to be very fun. But that is also something to keep our eye on to see how far that goes. Right? So thanks for that question, Miguel. So Diego asks, do DACA recipients get grandfathered in or do they need to apply? So this text that we just went through right now does not specifically mention any grandfathering in for current DACA recipients. But think of it this way, right? So here's the DACA program and everybody that's in it. Everybody that's in DACA is right here in this circle. This parole is DACA like this, right? So everybody in the original DACA circle still qualifies. You meet all the qualifications because you had to come before 2007. So we're amplifying it to say have to come before 2011, and we're taking away a lot of the things in DACA that disqualified people. There's no age limit. You'd have to come in before you're 16. There's no school requirement. There's nothing having to do with that. So that expands the universe in a much more broad, the number of people that could apply, with the DACA core folks still being able to apply. But that is the word apply. I don't read anything in there where it says, DACA recipients should be exempted from the application process, the filing fee, or anything like that. I really do think how it's written, if it passes as written, it will be current DACA recipients have to apply the exact same way that everybody else applies. Now the application might be a little bit different. USCIS has the discretion to make the application, and they might ask a question, are you a current DACA recipient? Have you ever been in the DACA program? And maybe those applications will get advanced or seen faster or processed faster, but nothing directly saying that they will be grandfathered in automatically and shipped 5-year work permits if this is to pass. Right? Why? Government wants their money. Right? They want more money. So keep coming, folks. Your questions, comments, concerns about this parole process that's in the Senate right now. Again, the Senate parliamentarian has not ruled on it. If she rules on it the same way, I've read and I've reread and I've circled and I've analyzed and I've put notes on the prior ruling, trying to figure out, okay, how is she going to rule on this? And, it comes down to the same question. Is she going to say this is merely incidental, the budgetary impact, and this program is a huge benefit? Very likely, right? But I think that's going to happen. I think the Senate parliamentarian is still going to come down and say, no, merely incidental, we can't do it. But I'm hoping that the Democrats get a spine and say, we appreciate your opinion, we disagree with you, you're unelected, it's simply procedure that we follow you. On this point, we're going to take your advice and ignore it. You're a former INS trial attorney, step aside on this issue. We listened to you on the minimum wage. We took out the provisions for residency. We think this is enough. We're going to go forward with it. Now you got to get Manchin from West Virginia on board with that as well. And I think pretty much all the House Democrats that have been pushing for more will certainly go for it. So hopefully that is enough to get it by. I think it's serious enough for me that I'm telling some of my clients, let's hold on for a few weeks on things that we were otherwise planning on doing to see if this passes. It's serious enough for me. Even though I think if I had to put money down, parliamentarians are going to come out against it, but we do need to have a concerted effort. There does need to be a push right now to move forward with it, regardless of how the Senate parliamentarian comes down, or even better than that, get the Senate parliamentarian out of here. Like, she should not be ruling on anything immigration related based on her past position as an INS trial attorney. You're biased, you should be conflicted out, you should hand that off to somebody else who didn't have a career as deporting immigrants and keeping them in detention centers. That's my opinion, right? So voy a cambiar a español. If you guys want, keep putting down any questions in English, more than welcome to. Pero tienen muchas preguntas en español también sobre quién califica abogado, qué está pasando con eso, es una nueva reforma, qué está pasando, si califica, si no califica. Por eso es mi motivo de estar aquí hoy, a contestar sus preguntas sobre eso, pero cualquier pregunta que tienes, pon aquí abajo si es de penal, si es de accidentes, y yo lo puedo contestar mejor que yo puedo. La Cámara de Representantes. Recuerdo que tenemos la Cámara de Representantes, tenemos el Senado y tenemos el presidente. Para cambiar la ley, para hacer nueva ley, tenemos que tener la Cámara de Representantes, pasar algo, eso va al Senado, el Senado pasa el mismo, luego va al presidente para su firma. Ya tenemos el primer parte ganado, pero eso ha pasado muchas veces, por Dream Act, diferentes cosas. Hemos tenido la Cámara de Representantes que pasó algo bueno y lo mandó al Senado. Ya está en las manos del Senado. En el Senado, porque estamos haciendo un proceso especial que se llama Reconciliation, que tiene que ver con dinero, es más limitado las cosas que puede poner en la propuesta. La Cámara de Representantes no le importó, ellos pusieron lo de migración. Hay una persona en el Senado que no es elegido, se llama el Senate Parliamentarian, que su trabajo antes era de ser fiscal para ICE, cuando era INS. Su trabajo era deportar gente y mantenerlos detenidos, ¿verdad? Ella va a decidir si podemos poner esas partes de migración en la propuesta o no. Ella ya ha negado 2 veces diferentes propuestas que iba a resultar en residencia y después ciudadanía para personas. Los demócratas están diciendo, pues esta vez no estamos pidiendo residencia, estamos pidiendo nada más permisos de trabajos por 5 años por gente que entró antes del 1 de enero de 2011. Sube su mano si usted entró antes del 1 de enero 2011. Excelente. Usted pasa el primer requisito, que entró antes del 1 de enero 2011. Luego, tuvo que estar viviendo aquí todo el tiempo de 2011 hasta ahorita. Si usted está viendo el video en México, en Guatemala, no le va a ayudar. Tiene que estar todavía viviendo aquí hoy en día. Y tiene que tener pruebas de 2011 hasta ahorita, ha continuamente vivido aquí. Usted ha visto nuestros paquetes de Daca, a veces es tan grande con documentos probando la presencia aquí. Vamos a tener que hacer la misma si pasa esta propuesta y si se convierta a ley. La diferencia de Daca y este programa es que Daca era un programa más chiquito. Todos en este círculo aquí entraron antes de 2007, menos de 16 años, y tiene la prepa aquí o estudió aquí. Este programa incluye todos esos aquí, pero también es mucho más grande. Todos que entraron antes de 2011 no tienen que tener nada de escuela, no importa la edad que usted entró, esos son personas que son elegibles si pasa una revisión penal, no puede tener una inadmisibilidad por el lado penal, no puede tener convicciones de drogas, drogas de venta, crímenes de turpitude moral, esos tipos de crímenes. Muy importante, si tiene cualquier récord penal, que usted lo revise con un abogado antes que mandar una aplicación, si hay en futuro una aplicación, ¿verdad? Y hay diferentes categorías de personas, si ha votado aquí, si ha hecho cosas que resultan usted no es elegible para ciudadanía, puede no ser elegible para ese programa también, pero es un programa muy grande, que están pensando en 6, 7 millones de personas que pueden calificar si eso pasa. Entonces, estamos empujando este Senate Parliamentarian de no hacer la decisión. Pon las manos de alguien más, porque usted era ex fiscal antes, para que nos da la decisión si eso es incidental de esa propuesta o si es algo que podemos incluir. Y si no, queremos que los demócratas dicen gracias, nadie eligió a usted, el público quiere eso, nosotros pensamos que no está afuera de este tipo de propuesta, vamos a seguir haciéndolo y mandarlo al presidente. Y si ese pasa, el presidente sí dijo que va a firmar y después en unos 6 meses vamos a tener las aplicaciones listos para que podamos mandar y pedir 5 años de permiso de trabajo en vez de 2 que tiene Daca. habilidad de viajar, habilidad de agarrar una licencia que está de acuerdo con el Real ID Act, que usted lo pueda manejar, y la promesa de no ser deportado, y incluye también una promesa de no dar esa información hoy o en el futuro a ICE o CBP para usar para deportar gente. Ya sé, con Daca muchos tenían miedo, ¿qué tal si gana alguien mal? Mira, ganó alguien mal, Trump. ¿Cuántas personas fueron deportados por la aplicación que hicieron por Daca? Ninguno que yo conozco, ¿verdad? Todos tuvo que cometer un crimen o algo más para que le ponen proceso, pero no era como lo estaban llenando camiones de gente que aplicó por Daca antes. Es el miedo que tuvo mucha gente, que eso no pasó con el presidente más duro de inmigración que hemos tenido por muchos años. Ojalá pasa. Ojalá tenemos esa chance de pedir permiso de trabajo. No es suficiente, no es que nuestra comunidad merezca. Queremos residencia, queremos ciudadanía, queremos la habilidad de ser parte completo de este país, de donde hemos criado nuestros niños, donde hemos trabajado por tantos años. Es nuestra obligación. Yo sí pienso en mi mente que necesitamos una reforma migratoria más por las personas que ya tienen documentos, para que ellos saben que los que están aquí sin documentos sí tienen el derecho a estar aquí, sí tienen el derecho de cruzar fronteras, sí tienen el derecho a trabajar, sí tienen el derecho a hacer una mejor vida para sus niños. Por eso necesitamos una ley para decirles a los americanos: no arrestan, no deportan, no quitan sus familias, las personas que están trabajando aquí, haciendo mejor vida para ellos y sus familias. Eso es mi opinión, humilde comunidad. Muchísimas gracias. Como siempre, si tiene cualquier pregunta, comentario de migración, penal, accidentes, pone un mensaje aquí abajo, mándeme un mensaje directo o mándanos un texto aquí a este número 602-910-4040. Muy buen jueves, comunidad, que tiene excelente día, y síguenos en todas las redes sociales. En YouTube, pone subscribe si no está viendo. Síguenos aquí en Face, porque cuando hay nueva información sobre eso, propuesta, de seguro vamos a notificar ustedes. Y como siempre, Sandra, y esperamos aquí en la oficina, comunidad, si lo van a tener una caja aquí pronto de semillas por un programa excelente que ellos hacen, regalando juguetes a niños. Vamos a estar abiertos para que ustedes también vienen aquí para entregar regalos para niños estas siguientes semanas. Aquí esperamos, Sandra, y toda la comunidad. Muchísimas gracias. Que tiene excelente día. Nos vemos.